More and more, the thread of analytics and AI applications are more tightly woven into the life cycle of entertainment, from pre-production planning to development of research and analytics strategy that prioritizes owned media in marketing to assess consumption patterns using cross-platform analytics that incorporate measures of both traditional TV and digital streaming businesses. Please welcome Gina Bahremand, Vice President of Audience Research at Fox Entertainment, Wharton Marketing Professor Kartik Hosanagar, and our session moderator, Executive Director of Wharton Customer Analytics and Wharton AI for Business, Mary Purk.
Thank you, Mark, for that warm introduction. I'm happy to kick off this session, Analytics and AI in Entertainment, with Gina and Kartik. I will be back for Q&A, so please jot down your questions in the chat function. Gina will start us out, and Kartik. So for now, Gina, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Mary, and thank you to ANA for the great discussion today. Today we're discussing applications for analytics in entertainment. And more specifically, I'll be focusing on data in the context of content and marketing TV shows. Fox has a 30-year legacy in content, and in 2019, we marked a new milestone when we completed the landmark Disney deal, selling them 21st Century Fox. We had a unique opportunity to reimagine the way new Fox would operate. With this new day one, we were in a unique position to truly reinvent our future as a business, as a data-driven, multi-channel entertainment company, with the unparalleled reach of a broadcast business at its core. Like our audiences, we are increasingly platform agnostic and multi-platform, proceeding as both linear and digital businesses simultaneously. To support the vision and foster growth in new businesses, we're reimagining data and analytics at Fox. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk a little bit about the value chain. It all starts with data. Data underpins our entire content value chain. And I think it's fundamentally important for us when we're thinking about analytics to think not only in terms of data and how data and analytics can impact our business today, but also in the future, the next decade. Combining and centralizing existing data sets, for example, structuring existing data, prioritizing granularity, person-level data, first and second party data sets when possible, establishing a scalable data strategy that accounts for short-term, medium-term, and longer-term goals. Number two is taking a data product-oriented approach to enable in-house data science and advanced analytics, thinking in terms of products and processes, not one-time solutions, investing in the enterprise. Number three is being future-focused, setting the groundwork for machine learning where applicable in the future, thinking in terms of experimentation and exploration. I think AI, once siloed to technology teams in specific departments in our company, should be thought of as a cross-enterprise opportunity. And broadly, I see two value propositions in this space. Number one is insights. How can we explore machine learning to help us process vast amounts of consumer data to uncover new audience insights? Can machine learning uncover insights that people can't? Number two is efficiency. We're often up against short timelines in operations, and costs can run high. Where are their efficiency gains? But also, not every business problem requires a data science product. Taking a right product for the problem approach to business questions is something that I encourage my team to do. Utilizing and supplementing third-party research and descriptive analytics when relevant. And when relevant, use a small-scale POC approach to data science initiatives. Let's talk about the owned marketing piece here. This emphasized being strategic about how we use Fox assets for marketing and building our businesses, our shows. Digital by nature provides richness, granularity, flexibility in measurement, and research design. I'm interested in ways we can extend our digital analytic frameworks across platforms to extract the most value from all of our assets. And I'm especially excited to be partnering with Wharton Customer Analytics on this problem. Overall, we see 3 areas for exploration in owned marketing, 2 of which we'll focus on today. So number 1, who is our audience for a given show? Or if we have a given show, what kind of audience will it resonate with? How can we be more accurate with our marketing messages and with our demographics? How do we become more granular, more accurate with our insights? Number 2 is how do we shape our marketing messages to be most effective? Today, we see measurable results from data-driven approaches to creative development. How can we make this more comprehensive, more accurate, and more efficient in the future? Number 3 is how do we shape our marketing delivery or promotion placement strategy to be most impactful across all of our owned assets? So let's take a closer look at some real-life applications. Creative testing and tracking. Our data-driven creative strategy helps us grow awareness. Testing conducted by our consumer insights teams helps to shape marketing messages for our campaigns. The goal here is to engage viewers by making them feel something. Qualitative testing is ideally conducted first. Focus groups allow the consumer insights team to dig into what people are feeling, liking, not liking about the existing promotions. Our creative team then makes adjustments based on those findings. And then we test quantitatively, getting a read on the numbers, which promo is best for the broad audience and across demos. After promo testing occurs, we need to make sure that the messaging is resonating with the viewer. And if we're garnering awareness and interest in our new programming, we use quantitative online surveys that track overall awareness for our shows and future intent to view. This is crucial and really important in helping to inform our marketing spend. In this real-life example we're looking at, this is last spring's campaign for season 1 of Lego Masters on Fox. Qual revealed some important findings here to inform creative. Coloring, for example, the importance of the host, Will Arnett, the nostalgia of building Legos, and even the excitement around seeing the Legos be smashed in one of the episodes. These findings informed production. And then Quant identified the highest testing promotion. Putting that promo in circulation drove the highest levels of interest and helped to increase awareness levels, which was a primary factor in helping to successfully launch the show. Today, we are supplementing this sort of traditional testing and tracking strategy with new digital and social measurement as well. For example, enriching these findings with social sentiment for a cross-platform view. We're also looking to advance metadata capture and exploring how this can inform more advanced analytics. And our creative team is experimenting with AI in trailer development. Earlier this fall, Fox Entertainment partnered with creative agency Space 150 to create a trailer that was written, edited, and scored all by AI for an event series about AI called Next. Space 150's engineering team inventoried Next's entire season as well as its script and score before constructing the trailer. This next example illustrates one way analytics inform our promotion placement strategy. We collect data on past campaigns and use multivariate analysis on person-level data to predict probability to tune in. We model the effect of multiple variables simultaneously, which allows us to isolate and quantify their impact on tune-in. In this real-life example, we're looking at a Fox drama in its third season and studying the effects of episodic marketing and other non-marketing variables on probability to tune in. Of promotion channels studied, we found that paid media advertising and promotion on Fox were most likely to contribute audience, and further, that promotion over the weeks prior to week of air were likely to be effective in driving viewership. However, other factors were also likely to contribute to tune-in, primarily viewing to prior episodes of the same show and lead-in hour viewing. This analysis is show-specific, and this particular example is pre-COVID. I share it to highlight an important challenge. We are trying to predict the future based on what happened in the past. And especially in our business, that is a very, very difficult problem. The pandemic has accelerated secular shifts across the TV business, widening the consumption gap between traditional, linear, and digital streaming channels. With over 500 scripted series alone in circulation annually, the market is more fragmented than ever before. Something that has worked in the past may not work in the future. Second is the data challenge, the cross-platform capture, being able to also incorporate and account for digital and streaming promotion. An internal cross-platform marketing analytics framework is necessary to truly maximize ROI. How do we become more accurate, more granular with our insights? Social data is rich with many use cases. This example focuses on a cross-platform application, looking at live audiences against social activity at a minute-by-minute and further a second-by-second level allows us to deepen our understanding around the relationship between content format and social engagement. Building these data sets over time will allow us to explore the data's predictive power further, improve predictive accuracy with the goal of informing not only program development, but also social actions that activate live audience. In the drama example, we were able to identify a relationship between action sequences and social conversation across dramas airing live on the same night. Our social team leveraged that finding and activated social conversation to increase audience flow in future episodes within the same season. The second example reflects a long-running reality show. This analysis suggested tweets as a lagging indicator. Twitter conversations suggest that reactions to preceding program segments contribute to growth in social engagement around commercial breaks. And these are just a few examples of the ways that we're using analytics and continuing to grow in the future. I'm really excited to introduce Kartik to tell you a little more.
Thank you, Gina, for that excellent presentation. It's also great context for what I'll be talking about. So I'm a professor at the Wharton School and faculty lead for Wharton's AI for Business Center. I'm also a CEO of a startup called Jump Cut Media that is bringing data and creativity together. Now, all of us recognize that over the last few years, how content is being consumed has fundamentally changed. For example, it's more digital than ever before. Just over the last 1 year, driven partially by the pandemic, consumption of content on digital streaming platforms has gone up by over 100%. Content consumption is also more diverse than ever before, drawing audiences from all over the world, certainly more global than it used to be. Now, even though content consumption has changed quite dramatically over the last several years, how content is ideated, developed, produced, and marketed hasn't really evolved at the same pace. For the most part, content creation is still very much an old boys club wherein a few studio execs make decisions on what kinds of content get made. This is driven to a large extent by prior relationships and very much driven by gut. Now, while that has worked in part, there's also costs associated with that. And at some level, this is a bit like throwing spaghetti on the wall. And sometimes it works, but oftentimes it does not. And there are costs associated with this way of decision making. For example, there are economic costs. The movie industry is, does not have a particularly high hit rate. The vast majority of movies actually fail to make a net profit. There are social costs as well, which have come to the fore in recent years. For example, a recent report by McKinsey suggests billions of dollars lost to Hollywood because of a lack of inclusion. If you look at inclusion from the perspective of race, from the perspective of gender, we start to see that the industry has not been particularly inclusive. And this has partially been because the industry has been looking for creators and talent in the same old places as in the past. Now, I believe that data, analytics, AI have the potential to transform all this. In particular, data and technology can play a big role in discovering new talent, in de-risking new voices and new stories, and investing in the right kinds of projects, and ultimately democratizing Hollywood in ways that haven't been feasible in the past. So I'm going to walk you through a couple use cases to illustrate this point. And then, of course, in the Q&A, we can explore what this means for other aspects of media, but also other industries as well. So first, in terms of a use case, I'll talk a little bit about applying data and AI to discover new voices, new stories, and new talent. One of the things the internet has done really is unleash a whole new army of creators. For example, look at YouTube, and we can see really thousands or hundreds of thousands of new creators who are constantly developing new content and putting out there. Now, somewhere on YouTube lies the next Steven Spielberg. And the question is, how do we find them early and how do we arm them with resources? Now, it's not feasible to manually comb through all of the videos being constantly uploaded on YouTube and identify which of these demonstrate an exceptional craft of filmmaking or amazing storytelling. And now that's where machine learning could come in. Now, machine learning can analyze millions of videos being uploaded and identify which of them have exceptional storytelling and good production value. In fact, at my startup JumpCut, we've built such capabilities where we have created machine learning algorithms that can scrape many of these online platforms, analyze the content, look at the videos for production value, look at the comments that people are posting to understand audience engagement and storytelling potential, and we can use that to discover new talent. And over the last few months, we have discovered new talent. One example of that is a creator called Anna Hopkins, who has been creating a number of shorts on YouTube. And through our discovery mechanism, we identified that Anna is somebody who's creating really exceptional content with great storytelling and audience engagement potential. And in fact, after discovery of Anna, in fact, her title has been optioned and is being developed currently for a potential series that one might hopefully see in screens in front of you. And in fact, now there are Hollywood agents who are interested in representing her. Another application of data and analytics is in A/B testing and making smarter and better decisions. These decisions could range from which projects to greenlight, meaning which ones do we invest tens of millions of dollars on, or how do we exactly market them? Who do we market them to? The traditional approach in Hollywood has been either an approach that is very gut-driven or one that is based on market research. For example, Hollywood studios often partner with tracking companies that will conduct surveys with a few hundred people to identify how their viewing preferences are evolving. For example, these surveys might focus on which movies they're intending to watch in the coming weeks and so on. Now, while the approach worked quite well 10, 15 years back, these approaches aren't tracking as well anymore because audiences are making their decisions on the fly, influenced by social media, and usually cannot provide a whole lot of insight and input into the kinds of decisions they'll be making weeks from today. This is where live testing and evaluating audience interests in settings that are natural to them and that are replicating the environment where they'll be making decisions, for example, in online settings, is very important. And this is where one can conduct these A/B tests, where one can show a number of titles to audiences and see which ones they're interested in watching. And this can be in online settings, in interfaces like, say, the Netflix or Amazon or any other, your favorite streaming interface, where users are seeing a number of titles and they're deciding which ones to engage in. You can run these kinds of tests at internet scale and internet speed, meaning hundreds of thousands of people in a matter of seconds or minutes, and put that data together. And in fact, usually in these tests, we show audiences posters and visuals, the log lines and synopses of movies and shows, and look at all kinds of things, from their interest in actually reading the synopsis fully, their interest in clicking on watch trailer or watching the show now. And all of that data can be analyzed to determine audience interest in any concept, how it compares to other competing titles. For example, one can look at how a focal product, in this case, a focal show or a movie, compares to other competing titles that are likely to be released around the same time. We can also break down that data by gender, by age, by audience interests, like what kinds of content they're interested in. And using that, we can figure out, who's the core audience for the show, which can in turn inform marketing decisions later. But it can also be an analysis or test that's done early on to figure out how to shape a show or a movie. One can also do this, like I said, at the marketing stage, where you're actually testing different trailer cuts of a movie. And you can look at how audiences react to different trailer cuts. What you'll see on this slide at the bottom is video completion rates, video click-through rates for different trailer cuts. And so we are able to assess again which trailer cuts are the ones generating a response, and actually with which audiences as well. We can also look at audience sentiments and comments and apply natural language processing to analyze that, to figure out how exactly a movie is likely to do. We can also figure out how exactly to market it and to whom and with which messages. We have evidence that this approach works and can be informative in helping companies make decisions on what kinds of content are likely to succeed. For example, we have found that this way of testing content is more predictive of viewership of content after it is released, much more predictive than the most common predictors in the industry today. For example, one common predictor is IP, which is when a movie or a show is based on existing books or existing news articles and the like. Another common predictor is based on talent on the show. So knowing that there's a star actor or some other star talent associated with the show is predictive of viewership. Now, we find that our testing approaches are far more predictive than IP or star talent, which implies that decision makers can invest in projects that do not have star talent, that may not be based on proven IP, meaning best-selling books or superhero comics and the like, and yet be more confident that this show or movie is going to work. And so it's a great way to de-risk new voices and new stories before making big investments in them. Ultimately, our work in this space suggests that data-driven insights, which involves traditional analytics as well as modern machine learning, can be applied in various stages of the content production and marketing process, ranging from discovering new talent to deciding which projects to invest in and how to develop them, or eventually how to market them. And one can apply the same ideas, I think, in almost any other industry. You can ask, how do we use data insights to figure out which partners and which suppliers we should work with? We can use data insights to figure out how to develop products, keeping customer feedback in mind, and ultimately how to market the products to the right consumers. With that, I think we'll switch to Q&A now, ready to take your questions, and I'll invite Mary back to moderate that discussion.
Thank you, Kartik and Gina, for those excellent presentations. Well, in today's sessions, we've proven that there is no industry that AI has not touched, and the entertainment industry is no exception. So let's get to it, and we have so many questions for both of you. So this first question we're going to start off with you, Gina, if that's okay. You commented on how important it is for the enterprise to be future focused, especially in the area of experimentation. Does this come easy to Fox, and how important is it to Fox's leadership to be behind experimentation with both, content and message creation?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I feel really lucky to be a part of Fox, and that the brand identity has really always been built on being innovators and creative risk-taking. And that's so ever present in our current leadership. Our CEO, Charlie Collier, and our COO, Amy Carney, are really dedicated to innovation and support that experimentation is a huge part of that. So they're really encouraging us to, take risks and dig deeper and try things that may not work. Of course, that comes with the responsibility to do it in a way that's beneficial and, responsible for the company. But having that sort of innovative leadership is really at the heart of all of our efforts.
Great. And now, Kartik, a question for you is, how does the transformation in content creation and consumption in the entertainment industry apply to other industries? And potentially, what are 3 takeaways we should think about?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Well, maybe let's look at that from the perspective of marketing professionals. I think one insight from the entertainment industry is, somewhat straightforward, but not often practiced, which is do your market research where customers are. The insight for us was that, the customers are online making instantaneous decisions about what to watch or what to buy. And yet a lot of the market research being done was in other settings, for example, in malls, and asking them what movies they plan to watch in 2 weeks. And that's not how customers are thinking. So that's one. I think the other one I'd mention is that, companies like Netflix, Amazon, and others have changed customer expectations, for example, with personalized experiences and so on. And I think, that translates into other industries where, you walk into an insurance provider or a health tech provider, and you're expecting the same level of personalization that you're used to in these industries like, say, media. And I think that's another area. And finally, I would say that it's not sufficient to merely focus on the demand side, meaning how you interact with customers, but also on the supply side. And this requires complete business transformation around data and digital technologies. The thought I would like to leave everyone with is that I think we should be thinking about analytics and AI today in the same way as one should have been thinking about the internet in the late 90s or cloud 10 years later. In the late 90s, entire industries were transformed because of online. And many incumbents didn't take it seriously, and they got disrupted by the likes of Netflix and Amazon. Same thing happened with mobile and cloud later. So I think it's something similar is happening around analytics and AI. So business transformation broadly is a very important consideration.
Right, and I think that was mentioned quite a bit today, that transformation, and you can't necessarily be scared of that transformation, but you definitely have to recognize that it's there to have the talent and the people to do that. So I think what Gina just talked about in terms of experimentation is really, you have to understand what you're doing, you know, what's best. So another question that has come up here is, building a data-driven insights engine can be expensive. You know, how do you prove the value use case for revenue at the outset, potentially, in order to get that funding? So specifically, Gina, at Fox, maybe you could give some context to the amount of time you have to spend on knowing what the value case is for that revenue in order to get that funding.
It's such a good point. I really like to take a POC approach with our data science projects, especially if we're talking about product development as a potential solution, because that question points it out perfectly. It is a costly initiative. And in particular, in the TV business, you know, margins are slim. I think that in some cases, a film product maybe lends itself more to a broader product, data science product development timeline. With all of that being said, more specifically, I think what I like to do with my team is start with small data sets. Sometimes working on big data science projects, we want more data. We want to have as much data as possible. I think there's a lot of value in really spending time on the feature selection process and sort of taking a step-by-step approach there, and investing in exploratory data analysis before moving forward. I think I mentioned earlier, I really like to take a right product for the problem approach to our business questions. And, you know, there are lots of use cases where a different form of analysis, be that descriptive analysis or, you know, a bigger traditional consumer insights project, can really answer the question without having to invest in a larger initiative. But even in the use cases that data science would be relevant, I think we can sort of take small steps along the way, not only to prove value for funding, but to make sure that that's the right approach. Sometimes coming out of EDA, we realize that, you know, there's another path to move forward, and there's value to be gained in taking that as an insight and redirecting the project rather than, you know, pushing through on something.
Well, and the points that you bring up, I think, are really lead into this next question that I'm gonna provide to Kartik. In that you can see how detailed Gina was in addressing all these revenue points. And so my question to you, Kartik, is, you know, given entertainment in its purest form is a creative-based industry, you know, are creative professionals ready for sophisticated market research? And specifically, just what Gina spoke about, the complexities of what she has to do within a creative company. In general, do you think, like, is this going to be the last bastion of AI? Is it going to be hard for them to adapt to AI and the sophisticated market research? Or what's your experience with your research and you know, working with your company and such?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. You know, it's not easy to walk into a room with a bunch of creators and then have a conversation about how data and analytics is suggesting things should be done differently. I'm sure Gina can probably write a whole thesis on this because she deals with it probably on a very regular basis. Certainly walking into that industry, one of my first observations was how there was this fear of, you know, what is AI and analytics going to do? Some of it from a lack of understanding, some of it justified, meaning there's so many subjective, hard to quantify things as in a creative business. Can it all be captured in data? And I think The one thing that I would emphasize is that we've increasingly positioned our tools as really tools, not as end decision makers. Ultimately, it's creative decisions being made by creative people, but with backed by data and with a hypothesis testing mindset. And Gina mentioned experimentation. I think that's at the heart of it. The heart of it is not that AI is making decisions. It's about let's formally state our hypothesis and let's test it with data and validate them. And if it's not playing out with the data, then let's have a conversation about why that's the case. The last thing I'll mention is that I think the single most valuable people in this area are not just the data scientists who can do the analysis and play with the data, but it's people who can translate to the non-data scientists, to the creative professionals, for example.
Well, thank you very much, Kartik and Gina, for all that great insight in the entertainment industry.